All right, today we're going to talk about something called serverless computing, and specifically a tool called AWS Lambda. Now, I know serverless sounds a little weird, right? But stick with me. It's really about a huge shift, a shift from building these big, clunky digital factories to commanding like an army of on-demand digital robots. So let's break down what that actually means.
Okay, so think about the last time you uploaded a photo, to Instagram or wherever. You hit that upload button and boom, a few seconds later, your friends can see it. Simple, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder what really happens in that tiny little gap? Behind the scenes, it's not so simple. A whole orchestra of computers had to spring into action, all just to handle that one photo.
You see, the old way of doing things required a massive digital factory, basically a server, that had to be running 24/7. It's always on, always sipping electricity, and you're paying for it, even when it's just sitting there, doing absolutely nothing, waiting for the next photo to come in. The serverless idea completely flips this on its head. It asks, what if instead of that giant, always-on factory, you had a specialized team of robots? Robots that literally pop into existence the instant a job arrives, do the work perfectly, and then, poof, they vanish. And the best part? You only pay for the exact seconds they were actually working. And that right there, that's the fundamental promise. It's the whole big idea. It's asking a really simple, but honestly a profound question. What if the people building this stuff, the developers, could just focus on writing the code to get the job done and not have to worry about managing the factory floor at all?
Well, that's exactly where AWS Lambda comes into the picture. It's the tool that makes this whole code on autopilot idea a reality.
So, what is AWS Lambda really? Well, it's a serverless compute service. And yeah, I know, the name serverless is kind of misleading. Of course, there are still servers somewhere. The huge, game-changing difference is that you don't have to manage them. AWS handles all of that messy stuff for you. So just think back to our robot analogy. It's like having these tiny digital robots just waiting around, totally asleep, costing you zero, until the exact moment a job needs to be done. And using them is actually incredibly straightforward. It all boils down to a really simple three-step cycle. First, you write the robot's instructions, that's just your code. Second, you give the robot a trigger. You tell it when to wake up. This is just an event, like, say, a new photo being uploaded. And third, when that trigger happens, the robot wakes up, runs your code, does its job, and goes right back to sleep. That's it. So simple. Okay, so that's how one of these little robots works. Pretty cool, right? But the real power of Lambda, the really mind-blowing part, isn't just one robot. It's in creating an entire automated assembly line of them, all working together, and you still don't have a single server to manage. Let's go back to our photo upload example because it's perfect for this. So a user uploads a photo to something called S3. You can just think of that as a giant digital filing cabinet in the cloud. That upload action, that's our trigger. Instantly, our first robot, a Lambda function, wakes up. Its one job is to use this cool AI tool called Amazon Recognition to scan the photo. Maybe it looks at it and says, hey, I see a dog, a beach, and a sunset. Now, that action triggers two more robots. Robot number 2 gets to work creating smaller thumbnail versions of the picture. At the exact same time, robot number 3 takes those labels, dog, beach, sunset, and sticks them in a super fast database called DynamoDB. Why? So the photo is now searchable. It's this whole chain reaction, a cascade of events, totally automated, and it all happens in just a few milliseconds. Incredible. And it's not just about file uploads. That's just one example. A Lambda robot can be triggered by almost anything you can think of. A tiny change in a database, a new message popping into a queue, an update to a live stream of data, or even just something as simple as the time of day. You could have one run a report every single night at midnight, automatically. It's this incredible flexibility. That's what makes the whole system just so ridiculously powerful. So, okay, let's kind of zoom out for a second. What does all this actually mean in the bigger picture? Well, it represents a really fundamental shift in how we even think about building software. Let's take a look at the real-world impact. The first, and honestly the most obvious impact, is cost. It's huge. This chart here just says it all, right? With a traditional server, that bar is high and it's constant. You are always paying, whether it's busy or just sitting there doing nothing. But with Lambda, look at that. You pay only for the compute time you actually use. And they bill you down to the millisecond. So if your code runs for 1/10 of a second, that's all you pay for. And if it doesn't run at all, you pay zero, nothing. So when you put it all together, the big takeaway is this. The serverless shift has some massive advantages. First, the cost is way lower because you're not burning money on idle time.
Second, there is zero, and I mean zero, server administration. No patching, no updates, no late-night worries. Third, it scales automatically. It doesn't care if one person or a million people upload a photo at the same time. Lambda just handles it. And all of that leads to the final, maybe most important point: much faster development. Your teams can just focus on writing code and building cool features, not on managing all the plumbing underneath.
So what this technology really does is give developers an army of tiny, tireless digital robots. They're just sitting there, waiting, ready to respond to almost any event you can imagine. It's a completely new way to think about building things. The question it raises isn't really about efficiency or cost anymore. It's about imagination. So I'll leave you with this. If you had that kind of power, an army of digital robots at your fingertips, what would you create?